Hello teachers, and welcome to our integration for today, where we're integrate technology in education. So for today, pag-uusapan natin ang paggamit ng Google Forms for formative assessments and summative assessments. Okay? So we'll be showing you 10 different ways to use Google Forms, okay, both for formative and summative assessments, and as well as to some extent for your instructions. Okay? Sorry if this video got delayed for quite a long time. Okay, we also got busy because of our year-end activities in our school, but I hope that you find this video worthwhile. Okay, and if you do so, teachers, please don't hesitate to like and share this video, and also subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell so that you'll never miss the weekly uploads, okay, and events in our channel. Okay, so enjoy, teachers, and let's begin with our different uses and different kinds of forms. So welcome, teachers, sa ating integration para sa araw na to. So we'll be talking about Google Forms for today and how do we use Google Forms for assessments. Okay, so I'll be showing to you and demonstrating 10 different uses of Google Forms for assessments. Okay, so let's start with the first one is what we call an opinion survey. So this is perfect for a formative assessment. You can give this midway during your lesson or at the end of your lessons. Okay, be it in a synchronous session or an asynchronous session. So this is a perfect way to measure understanding of your students in a more qualitative way, because you're not going to just simply ask them to choose among given answers. You're actually going to get varied responses from your students. Okay, this could also be used on simply surveying the feelings, thoughts, ideas, or maybe opinions of your students about a particular topic or a particular lesson. Okay, so opinion survey basically makes use of one or two questions, not too many, teachers, because these are subjective questions that will render many answers and varied answers. Okay, so just put one or two questions about your lesson, and then it makes use of the short answer type of question. Okay, so that's how you can collect or if you would like longer answers, okay, you may want to use the paragraph option or the paragraph question type. Okay, now of course, if you set this question, if it's just, well, like for example, one or two questions, make sure that you click the required button so that the students cannot skip it. Okay, and okay, one more tip: when you're using the opinion survey form, you can actually also set a validation, okay, to the responses. Okay, so you could limit, for example, certain things, okay, and control the responses of your students. Okay, so for example, let's just click that response validation. That's in the chocolate chips or the more option button, okay, or the ellipsis. Okay, so what we're going to set now is, for example, we can set you can set several ways you can set different ways to validate the answer of your respondents. Okay, so for example, we can set the length of the answer, and we can set it's either maximum or minimum number of count of characters. For example, we can set the maximum number of characters, and let's set it to 100. And you can also send them a custom text if in case their answers go beyond the validated response. So for example, we can say you went beyond 100 characters. Okay, so that will validate and ask some corrections from your students regarding their response. Okay, so that's an opinion survey form. Okay, that's number one. Okay, the second one is a quick poll form. Okay, so this actually is also similar to the opinion survey form. It's perfect for getting to measure, okay, the current understanding of your students, so that while you're doing your lessons, okay, or while you're progressing into your lessons, you're already able to collect information about what they know and to what extent do they know or understand your lessons. Okay, so basically this one, unlike the opinion survey, collects in a way, uses the multiple choice questions. Okay, because we're trying to measure here content, understanding, or the recall of ideas and concepts. Okay, so we're using a multiple choice questions, or you can also use the checkbox option. Okay, it's up to you. So for example, here I have a question: which culture influenced us the most? Okay, Spanish, American, or Japanese? Okay, and of course, I also click the required button to make sure they answer the question. Okay, and what's good about this, teachers, that when you're doing this, for example, when you give this during your asynchronous class, okay, you can actually already see, and since you can validate the answers, you can see the responses. Okay, you can already see and show it to your class, the responses of their classmates. So for example, right now, I have collected 3 responses for this question. Okay, so you can already see here, for example, okay, so that's the number of students who answered. Okay, 2 Spanish and 1 American, and none of them answered Japanese. Okay, so you can already see the ideas, where your students are standing, in relation to your lesson. Okay, so this is a perfect way to calibrate, maybe, or this is a perfect way to gauge your students' understanding and also perspective on your lesson. Okay, so that's quick poll, okay, form. Okay, the third one is what we call a check-in. Okay, so this is a perfect one for if you're doing synchronous session. Instead of like doing a conventional attendance sheet, okay, or roll call, okay, you might want to do a check-in form, okay, wherein you're going to give them your students, okay, a simple question. For example, right here, I ask them, who or what influenced you the most growing up? Okay, so that's a very simple, that's let's say actually a personal question, but still related to the lesson, because my lesson for this form is influences of our colonizers. Okay, so I also made use of the short response question, so I could gather varied and differentiated answers. Okay, and what's good about here, teachers, is that if your students answer this, okay, and notice, teachers, even if it's a check-in form, okay, I no longer put a date or a time, okay, because forms always take into account and record the timestamp of the responses. Okay, so when you generate, for example, okay, when you generate the Google Sheet for this form, okay, to check on who answered and who did not answer, okay, it will give you also the timestamp. Okay, but of course, what we're missing here, if you'd like for also to collect, of course, their name, you might want to put the name here. Okay, so let's just add, for example, a name. Okay, okay, so and you can also use the short response. Okay, so that when you generate the record for the check-in, okay, you will also see the names of your students. Okay, so that's the third one. Okay, so far the opinion survey, the quick poll, the check-in, these are actually quick, very short, okay, complementary activities, or formative assessments, okay, for your classes. Okay, if you have a check-in, of course, you can also have a checkout. Okay, so this could be like an exit pass, or most people actually call this the exit ticket. Okay, so you can actually make use of this. This would usually make use of a question that's related to your lesson. For example, in my question here is, what is your key takeaway in today's lesson? Okay, so you can also ask that. I also made use of the short response question, okay, or question type. Okay, so those are the short ones, teachers. Those are the short activities where you can use Google Forms for formative assessments. Even actually, if you'd like to also make it a summative assessment, you can also do that. Okay, but again, it depends on how do you plan to use it in your classes. Okay, So the fifth one is actually not necessarily directly an assessment, but it could actually, Google Forms could also assist in submissions. Okay, so for example, if you ask your students to do something, Google Forms is actually one of the perfect way to collect outputs from your students. Okay, so for example here, okay, I created what I call a submission portal. Okay, so of course I'm going to in this submission portal, no, I would definitely of course collect their names and then ask them for their section. So I could separate, or if you'd like teachers, no, a much efficient way is to separate it by section, so one form per section. Anyway, it won't be hard to create the forms because you can actually duplicate the form. So you go to the more options, okay, in your form, and you will see here make a copy right there. So you can make a copy. So for example, if you have 4 sections, then simply make a copy of this form 4 times for your 4 sections. Okay, that should not make it as difficult. Okay, because having all the sections in one form, it might hard for you to segregate or separate the different forms. So let's just erase that. Okay. Now, since it's a submission portal, of course, what we want to do is to have an ability, or to give the students the ability to upload their files. Okay, so what I made use here, teacher, is what we call the file upload question type. So if you go to your question type, you will see here one option called the file upload. Okay, so when you click on that, teachers, for example, let's add a question and let's choose file upload. Okay, so there will be a reminder. Don't forget that whatever they're going to upload in this particular drive, particular assignment or form, it will go to your drive. Okay, so that's also the reason why Google Form will always set a particular limit to the number, or to the storage, no, or the file, or sorry, like file limit. Okay. That can be uploaded into this form, so it does not like take so much of your storage in Google Drive. Okay. Now what happens, teachers? No, they just click continue. Okay. And you will be asked several things. Of course, your question. Okay. And you can also here allow like restrict or limit, okay, to particular file types. Okay. So when you click or when you toggle that button, teachers, now you can actually select which file types will be accepted for this submission. Okay. So for example, we'll be just accepting videos. Okay. So for example, you ask them to make a video, okay, or like a vlog, no? Then the format will be a video, okay, so that they don't submit any other files. Okay. And then you can also set how many files they can submit. So it's an increment of 5. So 1, 5, and 10. Okay. So for example, just set it to 1. Okay. And since it's a video, I'm going to give them a little bit more data. Okay. So I'm going to set it to 100 MB per student. Okay. But of course, you have to inform your students ahead of time, so that even before they make the video, they know that they have a limit of 100 MB. Okay. So they don't create a very long video. Okay. Okay. So that's it, teachers. No. By default, teachers, no, it will only accept up to 1 GB of files. Okay. You can actually change that if you want, but again, take note that whatever files that's going to be submitted to you will go to your Google Drive. And what's nice about these, teachers, that if you create a file upload question in Google Drive, it automatically creates a separate folder within your Google Drive, okay, for this form. Okay, so it will put all the files uploaded into this form into one Google Drive folder. So it's organized, okay, can easily be located, etc. Okay, so that's how we ask, no, or how we collect requirements, okay, using Google Form. And of course, if you generate your Google Sheet right here, if you go to responses and then you click on that create the spreadsheet button, okay, that will also create a spreadsheet for you. You could easily check who submitted and who have not yet submitted, okay, in your form, okay. But even without that, teachers, no, you can already see here, okay. So once students started answering, you will have a list, okay, of the students who have submitted already. So you could right away validate, no, submissions, okay? Because sometimes it's hard, for example, if you just send, for example, a Google Drive folder for them to upload their files, it's hard to monitor who submitted and who haven't submitted, okay? So here it's organized, no? So it's easier to monitor the progress of your students, okay, and submissions of your students, okay. And the next one is actually a more intensive use of Google Forms for assessment, okay? Similar to like a submission portal, but this time we are actually collecting links, okay? So this is what we call the Hyperdocs Form, okay? So what's a Hyperdocs Form? So for example, if you ask your students to create a website, okay? Or if you ask your students to create a Google Slides, okay, or Google Docs, or Google Spreadsheets, or you ask them to create something that will eventually have a link, okay, or a file from their Google Drive, okay. So if you're asking for a link, teachers, no, it would be nice, no, to also use Google Forms, okay, to collect all of those links. Because, for example, if you ask them, for example, to send it to your email, so you're going to receive, like, for example, like 40, 60 links into your email. It's going to be like flooding your email. Okay, so by putting it in Google Forms, it's easier to monitor. It's easier to curate them into one spreadsheet. Okay, so you could easily check them, etc. Okay, so that's all why it's beneficial to use a Google Form for submission of links. Okay, so for example, in this Hyperdocs, okay, I of course, no, asking for their names. Okay, also for sections, I think it's okay. You know, I personally think it's okay to just create just one form for all your submissions, and just put a section that they can choose, because anyway you can pivot contents or responses later on in your spreadsheet, okay, by using the pivot table function of spreadsheet, okay, or Google Sheet, okay, in your Google Sheet. So and of course, no, what we're going to ask here is for your students to paste the link of their, for example, essay, okay, via Google Docs, okay, or presentation via Google Slides, okay, or if you ask them to create a website via Google Sites, you could also ask them to paste the link here, okay. And what's good about that is that teachers know when you generate your spreadsheet from this form, okay, you can clearly see the list of the links, no, in one column in your spreadsheet. So you can easily click it and check it, and go back and forth, no. Again, unlike if you're going to ask them to send it to Messenger, to email, etc. Okay, so this will make the collection of data or submissions much more efficient on your part, no, and also on the student's part, no, and that's easier for them to also submit that. Okay, and of course, teachers, Google Form could be used for an auto grade, okay, or auto graded quizzes. Okay, so that's actually one of the many good things about Google Forms, no, that Google Forms can check, no, and grade your assessments and give immediate feedback, okay, to your students. Okay, so for example, in this auto-graded quiz, okay, of course I will collect their names, okay, and I will also collect their sections, okay, and then I created a section, okay, because because sections are good, no, in separating contents in your Google Form. Okay, so for example, in this case, I don't want them to see the questions, okay, together with the names and the section. So I want them to fill out the names first, and the section, okay. And since I require these questions, they cannot move on to the next section without accomplishing this. Okay, so once they're done with this, they click next. They go to the section of the quiz proper. Yeah, there. Okay, so let's just, for example, answer, no. So what's the capital of the Philippines? Okay, I hope that I'm correct. Okay, Sorry, we're on editing mode. So, in this question, teachers, no, let's try later using the preview. So, once you have constructed your question, for example, I have a question right there. I have options, okay? I could actually set a answer key, okay? But notice, teachers, that the answer key button is not yet here. Why? Because I haven't turned on the quiz, okay, for this form. Okay, so what we do, teachers, to start putting answer key and points, or assigning points to our quizzes, okay, we have to go to settings, okay, right here in the upper right corner, okay, and then in quizzes, okay, toggle the button, okay, right here, make quiz. Okay, so when we toggle that, okay, now the quiz has been converted. Sorry, the form has been converted into a quiz. Okay, so we have then we click save. Okay, and notice, teachers, that when you do that, okay, your questions now have this button below each question. Okay, which is to set an answer key. Okay, earlier, wala po yan. Okay, you can't find that earlier because you haven't turned on the quiz for this form. Okay, so since we've turned it on, so we can see this now. Okay, so to set an answer key, we click on the answer key. And when you click on the answer key, then you have to select which is the correct answer. For example, of course, the correct answer is Manila. Okay. And you can also add what they call an answer feedback, right? When you click that, you'll be allowed to give a feedback for incorrect answers, for example. So for all the incorrect answers, this will be my message. Okay, wrong. Please, the correct answer is Manila. Okay. And also I could give feedback, for example, great job, okay, for the correct answers. Okay. You can also insert links. Okay. For example, this is good if you're it is a formative assessments, and you'd like to teach your students, for example, all those that answered wrong, you can give them a link where they can study that particular lesson. So immediate feedback, immediate reaction, immediate intervention. Okay, so that's a perfect way to help your students. No? Okay, so we already set that. Okay, so once you've done that, teachers, you can also set the points here. For example, for this correct answer, I'm going to assign 1 point. Okay, and you can do that for the rest of the questions. For example, here I have a check box type question. Checkbox basically, teachers, no, they can select more than one answer. Okay, and you can also set more than one answer. Okay, so let's just click done, and let's go to our next question. Let's also set an answer key for that. Which countries occupied, colonized the Philippines? Okay, don't forget, teachers, we're setting an answer key here, of course. Japan, Spain, US. Okay, and since there are 3 answers, you might want to give the points, or 1 point is also good. It's up to you. Okay, you can also just like what we did earlier, you can also add an answered feedback. Okay, so this is a perfect way to give feedback, an instantaneous feedback to your students. Okay, so let's just click done. Okay, now let's try it. Okay, what happens? Okay, of course, teachers, no, you can always preview your quiz, your forms right here. For previewing your forms, okay, is a highly recommended thing before you even launch your forms. Okay, because that preview will give you an idea how your form looks like and if the form is working. Okay, so let's click preview. It will open to a different form, to the respondent or user's view of the form. Okay, so for example here, notice, teachers, no, right, what I said earlier, if you set a section, the first section, okay, you set a section, the students cannot see the questions right away. Okay, so for example here, I'm gonna type Franco Adun. If you intend to sort your students later on using their surname, then you might want to separate this. For example, we can separate this one, the name to this first name, so that you could easily sort your data later. Okay. For example, I'm going to choose section 1. I'm going to click next. Then I'm going to answer the quiz. For example, let's and then let's, for example, set a wrong answer. Let's set Quezon City, although Quezon City was once our capital. Okay, for a short time. Okay, and then let's just click submit. Okay, and then we will be able to see that. Okay, if it works. Okay, there it is. Okay. And you can right away what's good about Google Forms. It shows you analytics, okay, that you can use to analyze the answers of the performance of your students. Okay, so for example, this student, okay, I only have one answer right now, so and you can also see some insights in terms of their scores, okay, correct items, okay, etc. There are different views to the responses. You can view it as summary. You can also view it by question, where you can see their answers to particular questions. Okay, you can see it also by individual. Okay, if you'd like to browse per individual. Okay, so there are many ways to look at the responses, and of course, okay, you can always generate your spreadsheet right here to tally all the scores of your students. Okay, so that's a perfect way again to analyze your students' assessments. Okay, now we're down to our last 3 teachers, no? Okay, and the next one is again not necessarily an assessment, but this is something that we use for assessments. Okay, which is Rubric. Okay. I know for a fact, teachers, know that Rubric before is so easy to use, okay? Because you have, like, for example, you print a rubric, or you put it in your on the papers of your students, okay? But how about now, okay? Since we can't get a printed copy and send to our students, okay? So how do we give them, or how do we send, okay, a rubric? Or how do we grade our students' works using a rubric? Okay, so in this case, teachers, now we will use Google Forms, okay, as a rubric. Okay, we will grade assessments using Google Forms by creating a rubric form. Okay, so in this one, teacher, what I did was to, of course, put the name. Okay, and at the start, it's a little bit tedious because I recommend that you put all the names of your students already in the choices. Okay, so what I did here was to create a drop down. Okay, since I'm going to input a lot of names. Okay, so I chose drop down. Okay, so usually you choose drop down when you have many choices. Okay. It's going to go beyond the usual 5 or 6 multiple choices. Okay, so you will choose a drop down so that it would hide the rest of the options when it's not being answered. Okay, so what's good about this, teachers, that for at the start it's a little bit hard because you're going to input all the names of your students, but this form could actually be used over and over again. Okay, so if you'd like to use it again as a rubric or for your students, okay, you can reuse this form or make a copy of this form, okay, so that will not be a problem later on. Okay, of course, you also have the section, and then here I made use of a multiple choice grid option, okay, wherein I can assess several items, okay, using a particular range. Okay, so in the row, okay, you always put in the row the items to be evaluated. For example, I'm evaluating content, organization, insights, okay, and conventions. Okay, and on the column side, teachers, it's where you're going to put the range. Okay, I'm going to show you later as well, no, how it looks like from the respondent's perspective. Okay, I created another one here. Okay, so if you're not using this qualitative standards like poor, fair, good, very good, and excellent, you might also use point system. Okay, so the you have the in the rows you put the items to be evaluated, and here you put the points. Okay, so and of course you could also leave a comment. No, that's actually highly recommended. So you could leave a comment to your students. Okay, so what happens, teachers, no, when you're using a rubric form, okay, to grade your students. Okay, so you open the rubric. Okay, for example. Sorry. Okay, one more reminder before we set. No, since you're going to be the one using this, okay, to grade your students' work. Okay, what I suggest, okay, not a suggestion, but okay, what you have to set. So if you go to settings, okay, you'll have to set here to check this one. Okay, it should not limit to one response. Okay. So, in this case, teachers, I can submit more entries. Okay. So, what I'm going to do now, teachers, is when I open this form, okay, I'm going to see this. Okay, so this is what I'm going to see. For example, I'm grading the work of Jello Malyari right now. Okay, so I'm going to click Jello. Okay, and he belongs to section A. Now, this is now the rubric. Okay, so I could easily set this. Okay, for example, while looking at his work, okay, I see that his content is poor, okay, but his organization is fair, and then good, fair. And in one of his other assessments, although I don't really recommend that you combine different assessments in one rubric form, teachers, okay? But for example, no, the rubric form is on about posters. I could also use the point system, okay? For example, the content, I'm gonna give him 4 points. Then illustration, okay, organization, okay. Now, some teachers might be asking, how do we send this to our students? Okay, how do we send the results to our students? Okay, you can actually make use of what they call so generate. Of course, the first thing is to generate the results, okay, into a Google Sheet, no, Google spreadsheet. Once you are in the Google spreadsheet, you can actually make use of the extension called Autocrat. To merge the data into a Google document, which you can then send to your students. Okay, so that's going to be a perfect feedback to your students. Okay, so I can submit. Okay, so when you submit, teachers, for example, I can put a comment here. Needs improvement. Okay, and then I'm going to click submit. Okay. And notice here, teachers, no, that you can, since we set it, the form, no, not to be limited to one submission, okay, I have the option to submit another form, okay. So, after checking the Jello Malyari, I'm going to move to another student by simply clicking submit another response, okay. So, there it is. I just have to repeat it, for example. I'm going to choose now Jambi Santos, and you can simply repeat the process. So just imagine how easy it is to move from one student to another to check their works using a Google form. Okay, so that's going to make your lives a lot much easier. Okay, so next one is what we call a flip classroom. Okay, use of the Google form. Okay. This is actually a crossover between an instruction and assessment. Okay, so this both could be used for instruction, but this could also be used for a formative assessment. Okay, so yeah, so you can actually set here, for example, of course, the name, the section, and since it's a flipped classroom, no, so what you do is to give them the materials, okay, so that they could view it at home, or they could view it their own time. Okay, so self-paced. Okay, so for example, here I have a video. Okay, and following that video, I have a question. Okay, so I also put a short response type question. Okay, Or you can also put an image right here. And then I attach an image, okay? So you could also attach an image, teachers. That's one of the things that I really appreciate about Google Forms. By the way, teachers, the video here is directly from YouTube. Okay, so you can actually directly insert a video into your form. Okay. And of course, okay, so I also put a question, okay, below the material. Okay, so that's a flipped classroom. Okay, so imagine these questions and these materials not anymore being discussed in a synchronous session, and you can focus more on other things like activities, enrichment, etc. Okay, by forgoing with these activities. And of course, okay, as an assessment, you can actually use video and images, okay, for your students to use to answer your questions. Okay, for example, you have a video that you would like to watch, that you assign to them, like related to your lesson, and then you can ask questions about that video. Okay, be it multiple choice questions or in a paragraph, or the short answer types, or the open-ended question types. Okay. Now we're down to our last one, teachers, no, which is the choose your own adventure form. Okay, so this one is also both an instruction and an assessment. Okay, so for an instruction, okay, you can actually use the choose your own adventure format. Okay, to give your students the ability to choose which topics they'd like to explore. Okay. For assessments, okay, for formative assessments, you can actually use the choose your own adventure to check up on, or to give your students ability or opportunity to improve on certain mastery of certain knowledge, okay, or a certain skill. Okay, you can also use the choose your own adventure as a way to find out which topics, okay, your students don't know yet and want to explore and want to improve on. Okay, so you can, in a way, the choose your own adventure form gives you, or gives the students the opportunity to explore topics that they want to explore. Okay, so there are two conditions in a choose your own adventure question, okay, or form. The first one is that you have to have a multiple choice question first. Okay, so of course, for example, here I'm collecting the name, I'm also collecting the section, and together with that section, I already asked a multiple choice question. Okay, so for example, here my question is that which topic would you like to explore further, or would you like to explore? Okay, so so when you have that, teachers, no, the next condition, okay, is for you to have different sections. Okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to create one section per topic. Okay, so since we put, like, for example, Spanish per option. So for example, Spanish occupation, so there will be a section for Spanish occupation. American occupation, there will be a section for American occupation. Okay, and Japanese occupation, there will always also be an option, or sorry, a section for the Japanese occupation. Okay, so once we are set with the conditions, you have a multiple choice question, you have sections for all the options you have put there. Okay, what now we will do is to direct your students or your respondents, okay, to particular sections based on their answers. Okay, so what we're how to do that, teachers? Let's click the question. We're going to edit it. Okay, and here on the lower right corner of the question, you have the chocolate chips, or the more option. Let's click on that, and you will see here the option go to section based on answer. So that's what we're going to choose. So click on that. Okay, sorry, I unclick it. So click on that. Okay, and when you click it, teachers, this part will appear on your form, which is where do you want your students to be brought based on their answers. Okay, so what's going to happen, teachers, if a student answers Spanish occupation, I'm going to bring him to section 2, which is Spanish occupation, all about Spanish occupation. And then for American occupation, okay, I'm going to bring him to section 3, which is all about American occupation. Okay, and of course, Japanese occupation is on Japanese occupation. Okay, so once you're done with that, teachers, no, let's try. Okay, what's going to happen? Okay, so what we want to do now is that students, okay, based on the topics they have selected, can go to this form, okay, or different forms. Okay, so for example, let's go to let's do a preview. Okay, so for example, I'm going to put here Franco. We're testing, teachers, now. We're testing if the flow actually works. Okay, so section A, and then for example, I would like to know or have questions about American occupation. Okay, and I'm going to put next. Okay, there it is, teachers. Now, notice that when I click the American occupations, I was brought to the American occupation option. Okay, and here I have I have a video on the Philippine-American War. Okay, and then I also have questions. Okay, so this is where the assessments could actually also come in. Okay, you can put formative assessments, okay, enrichment activities for your students to work on in order to gain more knowledge or understanding about this topic. Okay, then I would simply click next. Okay, let's choose a question. Okay. Okay, so that's also okay, you could also manage issues, no, yung what comes after that. Okay, if we go back to the form, teachers, okay, for example, okay, what we can set, for example, okay, here, what happens, or what's the next section for this. Okay, for example, here in each section, we can put that after this next section, they will already go to submit form already. Okay, or if you want, you can also set yet another multiple choice question that would ask them if they want to explore the other two topics. Okay, so for example, okay, instead of setting that, okay, we can set another condition. For example, let's go to American occupation, and then below American occupation, we're going to add a question. Okay, would you like to explore the other topics? Okay, so we can set, for example, Spanish occupation, just in case they'd like to explore also the other ones. Okay, and then they can also answer no. Okay, and then similar to what we did in the first multiple choice, we're also going to set it based on, or go to section based on the answer. So if they answered, for example, I'd like to explore the other topics, which is Spanish occupation, we'll bring him to section 2. Japanese occupation, we'll bring him to Japanese occupation. If he answers no, teachers, we will allow him to submit the form already, so that he's done. Okay, and you can actually copy this question to the rest of the sections, so that each section will have that kind of option, wherein after they're done with the materials and the question, they'll be given option if they'd like to explore the other sections. Okay, so that's a perfect way. No? Just imagine you're actually conducting less instruction, assessments, by just simply using Google Forms. Okay, so teachers, that would be it for today. Okay, so we explored different kinds of uses, or different ways to use Google Forms for formative assessments, summative assessments, as well as to some extent for your instructions. And thank you, teachers, for joining us today in our integration. And I hope that you learned a lot in using Google Forms in different formative assessments and summative assessments, as well as for your instructions. For our next video, we'll be talking about different applications of technology in education. In particular, we'll be talking about Google Slides and Google Sites in building portfolio assessments for your students. So we'll see you on our next integration session here at our channel. So please don't forget to like and share this video, and also subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell so that you will never miss any events in the future. Bye, teachers, and have a great day.